we go right into Eli.
Eli's ready?
Eli from thelines.com. Eli, what is up, my friend? How are you? Welcome. Is this his debut appearance on BVB?
Yes.
Oh, no. We really did not do a good job on that. We should have had you on a long time ago.
I know,
How
but
are
he
you,
had
my friend?
contractual obligations. He could not appear. E, what's up, man? How you doing? What's going on?
What's going on, guys? Pumped to talk college hoops or whatever you want to discuss.
Well, I mean, we
Gotta
have
talk
to
about
talk
college hoops.
This is
Absolutely.
your time. This is
this is me and
your
Eli.
season, E.
We're on the same page, Dave.
Tell them.
Get on board, Dave.
Go
Come
ahead.
on. Let's
Go
go,
ahead.
Jays. Roll Jays.
Tell them.
Creighton Blue Jays. We start
it
today.
off. Go ahead.
We start the Creighton Blue Jay trek to Phoenix. It starts today in Omaha against Florida A&M, the 35.5-point favorites tonight. They better take care of business. Why do you like Creighton? Everyone knows why I like Creighton. Why do you like Creighton this year?
Yeah, I was a little disappointed because I thought you were, picking them because I had bet them to win the national title, and Dave tells me you bet them every single season. So
Pretty
it's
much.
not
This is
like
his team.
This is my.
This is his squad.
I was the pre and post game show host for the Creighton Blue Jays for 5 years, and I ran a rival site for 7. So I've been tied to this program for almost 2 decades. So I'm very much into the Creighton Blue Jays family, if you will.
Yeah, I don't blame you. But this team, if you go back to last season, obviously you know this, Matt. You make an Elite Eight. You're seconds away from beating San Diego State, a questionable foul, but I was happy with it because I had a San Diego State future to make the Final Four. I bet that during the Sweet 16. But this team, I think, got a little addition by subtraction. And I was a Ryan Nembhard guy going back to the last couple of years. Obviously, the injury, the season-ending wrist injury going back to a couple of years ago, hindered Creighton's chances from knocking off Kansas in the second round. But that also gave Trey Alexander an opportunity to play more on ball. So not only do you bring Alexander back, who's really efficient in pick and roll situations and can also shoot it pretty efficiently too. We'll see if that spikes a little bit in terms of his 3-point efficiency. But you bring in Stephen Ashworth from Utah State, which is a perfect fit in Greg McDermott's floor spacing offense. Maybe you lose a little bit defensively with Nembhard on ball, but still Ashworth makes up for that and then some offensively. And then Ryan Kalkbrenner is the pin that drives this team at both ends of the floor. One of the best defensive bigs in college basketball, really steers that top 20 adjusted defensive efficiency that Creighton sports over the last couple of years, and I expect that to continue this season. And then if he could space the floor a little bit himself, those are the reports that McDermott is letting him shoot the ball a little bit more. And you think about the loss of Arthur Kaluma, which is another kind of addition by subtraction for me, even though he was a really athletic four, not the most consistent 3-point shooter. You bring in the Virginia 4-man that was a top 100 recruit, can theoretically add a little bit more 3-point versatility than Kaluma had. And you also have Mason Miller, Mike Miller's son, one of the best 3-point shooters over the last couple of decades, at least spot-up shooters. Miller can really stretch the floor too. So this is more of your traditional McDermott-style offense. And then you add in what they already brought to the table defensively with Kalkbrenner back. I think he's actually an underrated Wooden Award candidate. I have Creighton power rated 3rd in the country, and I have them. Yeah, I have them power rated pretty high, and I expect this team to win the conference, to win the Big East, and really push for a Final Four this year.
Wow.
Baylor Sharman's like 29. Like, he's really old.
Grown man.
He's a full-grown man. Like, he is and he is the heartbeat a lot of ways for that team. And he's got the
really good rebounder.
Really good rebounder, but inconsistent shooter, but he's a guy who played in the Summit League for South Dakota State and really has stepped up. And now he has a chance to lead this team and do some big things. Told you, Dave, get ready. A lot of Creighton basketball talk coming.
That was outstanding. This portion of the show brought to you by the Creighton University basketball program. And biggest fans right here, guys backing them at 30-1. That's awesome.
Yep. He got 35-1. I got 30-1.
Well, this
I got
guy's
40-1.
around.
You got 40-1.
Yeah,
even better.
He gets good numbers. Don't worry about
30.
it. He knows how to get the different apps and all this other stuff where he's at. Eli, tell the people, we got a lot of people new to the show coming in all the time, and they've been following. They enjoy the show, they enjoy the content, but they're learning like what to look for and how to bet. Yesterday, you wake up and you open your app or you go into a sports book and there's 100 games and you're like, what in the hell is going on? I know from booking it for so many years, it's a nightmare. It's hard. There are betting opportunities, even if you don't know where the schools are. like, Stony Brook is playing St. John's today. That might be a betting opportunity. It might not. What do you look for early in the season, E, as far as like when you actually dive in and make a play, or what are you looking for to make future plays like you did with Creighton?
I look for continuity, like with Creighton specifically. A lot of bettors are attracted by the big numbers. Like you look at a team like Florida, which I actually bet going back to last year. That was Todd Golden's first year going from a mid-major to a high-major program. And they added some new pieces. They have some really highly regarded talent when it comes to the NBA draft, like a Riley Kugel. I think he's a top 20 prospect or something like that, a first-round talent for sure. But I look for, again, like you got to have some chemistry still. But that, with that said, I take chemistry, I take continuity and newly infused talent with a grain of salt. And for me, Dave, I'm kind of watching more so. I'm truly just looking at the screen rather than betting per se over the first couple days, over the first couple weeks, because college basketball has completely transformed along with college football with all the transfers we've seen and the new age transfer portal in college basketball specifically. Granted, you have some waivers that weren't necessarily granted by the NCAA. COVID was maybe the exception to the rule going back to last season. Now it's a little bit different, even though some guys tried to tack on another year of eligibility. DeAndre Williams, for instance, actually 27 years old, tried to play another year of college basketball at Memphis. He was not granted that eligibility by the NCAA. But I'm really watching over these first couple weeks and trying to get a sense of, okay, where is the continuity, at least at the beginning of the season, with some of these transfer-led rosters, like a Baylor, for instance. They get none from VCU. They get Ray J. Dennis from Toledo, a two-time transfer, actually, going back to his days at Boise State. They're playing a Auburn team that may be a little bit undervalued by the betting market, whether it's in the futures market or just on a game-by-game basis. And maybe the Tigers have a bit of a size advantage with Broome in the front court, but maybe Baylor in this roster clicks a little bit more than I expect initially, considering their backcourt is pretty much freshman-laden and transfer-laden. So I'm really trying to get a sense more than I ever have of the way college basketball rosters are formatted, just because my projections may not be as spot on as I would like, or they normally are, because again of the new age transfer format.
You mentioned continuity and chemistry, and it was funny because Jay Billis did a video this morning and he talked about the Creighton Blue Jays, but he also talked about the other team that I bet as well, and that's Marquette. You have Shaka Smart. I think this is the most Shaka Smart type of team that he has had maybe since his days at VCU. I don't think Texas ever really fit into what he really wanted to do defensively and be able to play half court and full court and really pressure. I love this Marquette team. I really like Creighton. Obviously, UConn defending champs are going to be in the conversation for the conference as well. But what do you make of Marquette and what they could do this year?
See, I'm not a Marquette fan this year. I thought they outperformed expectations, and maybe you expect that to carry over, and I get it. But losing Maxence Prosper, I mean, we saw with Michigan State, losing their own four-man going back to last year, and Joey Hauser played a big role in that loss to James Madison, even if people want to call it a fluke just because MSU shot 1 of 20 from 3 yesterday. I don't think it's necessarily an anomaly. I'm not saying they're going to lose to a bunch of opponents in non-conference play. But back to Marquette, Maxence Prosper added a ton of length and a ton of versatility for a team that relied last year a lot on ball pressure and forcing takeaways, to your point, like Shaka Havoc normally does. But one of the best on-ball defenders in college basketball, even as a four-man. He also meant a lot off the ball in cutting offense, or at least an offense under Shaka that relied a lot on off-ball movement. So even though you get Kolek back, who I think is a first-team All-American, or still one of the better point guards in college basketball, Iguodaro is a really underrated 5 that could space the floor. There's depth and there's a lot of scoring. This is going to be one of the most efficient offenses in the country. But defensively, for a team that was borderline top 40 in adjusted defensive efficiency, and then you lose your best defender and most versatile defender at that, I'm not nearly as high on Marquette as maybe you are and the rest of the betting market is.
Well, when you look at the numbers as far as like teams to win it all, in years past, it was like, all right, the Big 12 is the best conference. They're the deepest conference. I mean, the Big East got a couple really good teams in the top 5, 6, 8 choices. I mean, the Big 10 has 2 really highly rated teams in Michigan State and Purdue. Who's the best conference, right now in college basketball?
It's a great question. I give the slight edge to the Big East. And I know I just kind of downgraded Marquette, or at least talked down the Marquette hype, but it's still a fantastic conference. As Matt alluded to, you have the defending national champion, a team that I was very high on the last 2 years. I bet UConn 2 years ago to win it all. I bet them going back to last November at, I think, around 50 or 60 to 1. So, and this is a team that, yes, lost to Dama Sanogo, but you bring back one of the best freshman bigs in the country who's supposed to take a really big step in Donovan Clingan. He's dealing with a bit of a foot issue. I think that had more to do with the minutes restriction than it had more to do with UConn's depth, even though they have a lot of depth. You add in a really good transfer from Rutgers that could space the floor. So Creighton, who I mentioned, Villanova may be a little bit overhyped, but they're definitely going to be better than they were last year, considering all they brought in from the transfer portal. And like I alluded to with the Auburn-Baylor matchup tonight, and just betting college basketball at the forefront of the season, I may be a little too low or a little too high on teams just because of the unknown variable of continuity because of all of the transfers that are shifting around in college basketball. But I do still, with that said, think it is the Big East. The Big 12, as you mentioned, Dave, is I mean, you add in a team like Houston that added LJ Cryer, and they really upgraded their offense because of the addition of Cryer. And this is still one of the best defenses in college basketball. I think if you can get a 25-30-1 ticket on Houston, that's not a bad bet. This is probably going to be one of, if not the best offenses that Kelvin Sampson has ever had, if not the best offense he's ever had, because of the addition of Cryer and how efficient of a three-point shooter he is. The Big Ten definitely has depth. I'm a little bit concerned of the middle of the pack, even though a team like maybe Wisconsin and Illinois is getting some hype. My other futures bet, for context, I bet Maryland. They're my long shot bet to win it all at 80 to 1. Ooh. I like Purdue maybe more than I usually would, but I'm not as high.
We got a lot of Indiana people in here. They love Purdue,
they know better. They love Purdue.
Well, they're cautious. They're like they don't even want to get excited.
You can't
because of what happens in March. Is that bad?
Yeah. Rightfully so, because Matt Painter has struggled. And when Zach Edey doesn't get a shot in the final, 8+ minutes against a 16 seed that lacked a ton of size, I'm still very skeptical of Purdue's guard play, even though Braden Smith has gotten a lot of love and the freshmen turned sophomores are supposed to take a big step. They upgraded at the guard position a little bit, speaking of transfers, with Lance Jones, a Southern Illinois transfer, who, if he can raise his efficiency with maybe a little less volume, Purdue's backcourt should be upgraded, especially when you consider depth going back to last year and experience for that matter. But yeah, I'm high on Maryland. And then you also think about the SEC, which I think is one of the most underrated conferences in college basketball, just considering the full body of work. And if Kentucky is Kentucky, which, I mean, just based off of the adjustment we saw last night with John Calipari in the second half, yes, it was against New Mexico, but Trey Mitchell at the 5 changes a lot. And John Calipari should send a thank you note to Bob Huggins, who, if Bob Huggins isn't gone at West Virginia, I don't think Trey Mitchell is at Kentucky. If you guys want to discuss that at length further, be my guest with what happened with Huggins.
Eli, two-parter. The first is, we saw it in football. We're seeing it in football right now with the Pac-12. Yesterday, we had Oregon and USC both win here in Las Vegas. The broadcasters keep on talking about how awkward this is, that this is the last year for the Pac-12. And yes, the Pac-12 has been a good football conference, but basketball really has made its heyday with UCLA and everything else that's gone into the history of the Pac-12. How do you feel about the Pac-12 basketball-wise ending? And number 2, the chat's telling me your birthday's April the 4th. You and I share a birthday. Is this true?
No.
Okay. Didn't think so. Okay. I was like, wait a minute.
I can't have another 4-4.
I would have known this. I was like, I think I would have known your birthday. The chat says your birthday is mine.
It's not even close. It's
okay,
close.
Good.
Okay, there we go. That's fine. I want to make sure of that. But how do you feel with the Pac-12 going away?
Yeah, I think I'm a little disappointed that we're not going to get Pac-12 after dark. I know people relate that more to college football than college basketball, but no more Bill Walton late at night. I don't know I guess you still, maybe the Big Ten will infuse him into the Big Ten network. They probably will have to just because of ratings. So it's disappointing. I hate all the shifting going on in collegiate athletics. I'm not a big college football better, a big time college football fan, but it's disappointing that we're not going to have, I don't want to see USC and Illinois become a rivalry, or USC Ohio State. I don't really care for it. And I want to see the Big Ten play mainly Midwest competition. I'm not that interested in finding the travel spots and advantages or negatives with teams going across the country during a given week, although maybe it creates a little bit of a betting edge. So maybe I will be interested in it in a year. But right now, I just don't really care for it. But back to, USC is a really interesting team this year because you add in a 5-star freshman, the best pure point guard from a freshman standpoint, in Isaiah Collier, and he could really, really explode off the dribble like we saw last night against Kansas State. I didn't bet the game between USC and Kansas State, but I didn't really understand the line. That seemed like, we were touching on transfers a little bit ago, and I think Kansas State was getting a little too much credit in the market just based off of what we saw last year, making that Elite Eight run with a transfer-filled roster and the expectation that K-State, the Wildcats, could do it yet again. They got one of the best mid-major transfers in the portal, but USC has a ton of length, and I know Andy Enfield has underperformed at times, but he also got the Trojans and that Evan Mobley team to the Elite Eight against Gonzaga going back to, I think it was during the COVID year, so 3 or 4 years ago. And with Collier and Boogie Ellis, that is one of the best backcourts in college basketball.
Yeah.
And like I mentioned, they have a lot of athleticism, not necessarily a Mobley type in the front court in terms of scoring, but really good defensive bigs and shooting all over the floor. So I don't care for the Pac-12, Big Ten movement and all the movement across collegiate athletics, even Houston to the Big 12. I kind of like them being in their own little AAC bubble. But I'm very high on USC, just looking at this team and conference in general this season.
So last one for me. We got to talk a little football. How's the NFL betting been? You write a weekly column, you do picks. And are you going to watch 1 second of Carolina and the Bears on Thursday night? Because that's another under. Under's been good. How's your NFL season been going? What do you think about Thursday night?
Yeah, it's been a really good. I'm not just saying this to say it. Obviously, you have a lot of Twitter, whatever Elon Musk wants to call it, touts that try to pimp up their record. I'm not one of those people, but you asked the question. It's been a really good season. I think I'm up like 10 units or so betting the NFL, and I have one bet in so far. It's Washington. I got one of the last 6.5s on the board. I would still bet a cheap 6 at Seattle. I think the market is overvaluing Seattle a little bit, even in a bounce back spot and their home field advantage. I get the way the market thinks about Sam Howell, but it's still his rookie season. But I digress. So it's been a good NFL season. And to answer your second question, Dave, I don't know how I could watch a second of Bears Panthers if I didn't hate Chicago sports as much as I do, because I used to work in Chicago sports radio. I hate Bears fans with a passion, an absolute passion. So I will be hate watching Bears Panthers. How about that?
That is phenomenal. Eli, give the folks information. Where can they read, watch, hear you? Where can they get your stuff?
Yeah, you can read all my NFL write-ups and college basketball write-ups, power ratings, futures guide. I mentioned I have those bets on Creighton and Maryland. You can find the futures column over at thelines.com. I've known you, Matt, for a while. I've known Dave for what seems like a lifetime. I met him for the first time in person, and he felt like he was family at that point. So
I love it.
Good guy. You guys are both good people, and hope you guys have a good rest of the show.